You know what time it is? Woo! Get into it! We are back. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me, y'all. Anytime y'all see me do this or do this, it's because I feel like I still have my glasses on. Anybody that wears glasses knows exactly what I'm talking about. So, forgive me for that. I guess it's a force of... Yeah, it's definitely a force of habit. It's impatterned within me. Which brings a funny story. Always wanted glasses. Knew I needed glasses because I would always sit in the front of class and would have trouble seeing the board still. And I told my mom, and this is no shade to my mom because I know she's probably going to see this video. Love you, Mom. Love you so much. She didn't believe me when I was like, hey, I need glasses. And she's like, nah, you just try to be like your favorite superhero, Superman, so you can look like Clark Kent. You don't need no glasses. Then she had a parent-teacher conference with one of my teachers, and they asked her, like, Miss Davis, does Chris wear glasses? No. They seem to have a hard time looking at the board in the front of the class. And if I'm not mistaken, that following day, she was like, all right, I made your appointment to Pearl Vision. We're going to go get you some glasses. And I had a pair of black and red glasses, which I unfortunately sat on, and then I was able to get a second pair, I think like a week later. Hope everybody's having a good night. Uh-oh. I got my tea wrapped around my spoon. Hold on. Ah! There we go. That's better. And I do not own the music that we are listening to in the background. And I've seen this YouTuber before, and I'm going to have to put on my glasses so I can see the name, because I'm that blind. Cara Comparato. She's an excellent pianist. And she does a lot of different video game covers, anime covers, different shows, and, I really love her work, and I just... Okay, I thought I spilled the whole cup of tea. I was just like, wow, Chris, really? Hold on one second, y'all. And fun fact, growing up and going to Pebblebrook, it was required for all of the vocal students to take piano lessons, which I did. I got pretty good in my later years there, in my junior year. I was able to play for 5th period, and it was pretty awesome. Oh, that's just a notification that I'm going to silence for a little bit. But, I got a keyboard while I was in high school, and it's still with my mother, which I am going to get eventually so I can get myself back into the groove of things, because I loved playing piano. Still can read music, just don't have an instrument to play to practice on consistently. Which, kids, I'm not kidding, practice does make perfect. It really does. Okay, enough of me jabbering on. I have it, there we go, put your hand behind the product. Shout out to the Village Herb Shop, because that's where I got this mug, this steeping cup. It's got the Japanese crane on it. It's beautiful. Relax, unwind, let the prana flow. Let's enjoy the story, because we only have one chapter left of the Neverending story. And the ending is going to throw you for a loop. Let me just say that. Chapter 25, The Picture Mind. Yor, the blind miner, was standing beside his hut, listening for sounds on the snow-covered plain around him. The silence was so complete that his sensitive hearing picked up the crunching of footsteps in the snow far in the distance, and he knew that the steps were coming his way. Yor was an old man, but his face was beardless and without a wrinkle. Everything about him, his dress, his face, his hair, was stone gray. As he stood there motionless, he seemed carved from congealed lava. Only his blind eyes were dark, and deep within them there was a glow as of a small bright flame. The steps were Bastian's. When he reached the hut, he said, "Good day. I've lost my way. I'm looking for the fountain the water of life springs from. Can you help me?" The miner replied in a whisper, "You haven't lost your way, but speak softly, or my pictures will crumble." He motioned to Bastian, who followed him into the hut. It consisted of a single small bare room. A wooden table, 2 chairs, a cot, and 2 or 3 wooden shelves piled with food and dishes were the only furnishings. A fire was burning on an open hearth, and over it hung a kettle of soup. Yor ladled out soup for himself and Bastian, put the bowls on the table, with a motion of his hand invited his guests to eat. They ate in silence. Then the miner leaned back, his eyes looking through Bastian and far into the distance as he asked in a whisper, "Who are you?" "My name is Bastian Balthazar Bux." "Ah, so you still know your name?" "Yes. And who are you?" "I am Yor. People call me the blind miner, but I am blind only in the daylight. In the darkness of my mind, I can see." "What sort of mine is it?" "The min-round mine, they call it. It's a picture mind." "A picture mind?" said Bastian in amazement. "I've never heard of such a thing." Yor seemed to be listening for something. "And yet," he said, "it's here for just such as you, for humans who can't find the way to the water of life." "What kind of pictures are they?" Bastian asked. Yor shut his eyes and was silent for a while. Bastian didn't know whether to repeat his question. Then he heard the miner whisper, "Nothing gets lost in the world. Have you ever dreamed something and when you woke up not knowing what it was?" "Yes," said Bastian. "Often." Yor nodded. Then he stood up and beckoned Bastian to follow him. Before they left the hut, he dug his fingers into Bastian's shoulder and whispered, "But not a word, not a sound. Understand, what you're going to see is my work of many years. The least sound can destroy it. So tread softly and don't talk." Bastian nodded, and they left the hut. Behind it there was a wooden head frame, below which a shaft descended vertically into the earth. Passing these by, the miner led Bastian out into the snow-covered plain. And there in the snow lay the pictures, like jewels bedded in white silk. They were paper-thin sheets of colored transparent ensign glass of every size and shape, some round, some square, some damaged, some intact, some as large as church windows, others as small as snuff-box miniatures. They lay arranged more or less according to size and shape, in rows extending to the snowy horizon. What these pictures represented it was hard to say. There were figures in weird disguises seemed to be flying through the air on an enormous bird's nest, donkeys in judges' robes, clocks as limp as soft butter, dressmaker dummies standing in deserted, glaring lighted squares. There were faces and heads pieced together from animals and others that made up a landscape. But there was also perfectly normal pictures. Men mowing a wheat field, women sitting on a balcony, mountain villages and seascapes, battle scenes and circus scenes, streets and rooms, and many, many faces, old and young. Wise and simple, fools and kings, cheerful and gloomy. There were gruesome pictures, executions and death dances, and there were comical ones, such as a group of young ladies riding a walrus, or a nose walking about and being greeted by passers-by. The longer Bastian looked at the pictures, the less he could make of them. He and Yor spent the whole day walking past row after row of them, and then dusk descended on the great snowfield. Bastian followed the miner back to the hut. After closing the door behind them, Yor asked in a soft voice, "Did you recognize any of them?" "No," said Bastian. The miner shook his head thoughtfully. "Why?" Bastian asked. "What are they?" "They are forgotten dreams of the human world, Yor explained. "Once someone dreams a dream, it can't just drop out of existence. But if the dreamer can't remember it, what becomes of it? It lives on in Fantastica, deep under our earth. There There the forgotten dreams are stored in many layers. The deeper one digs, the closer together they are. All Fantastica rests on a foundation of forgotten dreams. Bastian was wide-eyed with amazement. Are mine there too? He asked. Yor nodded. And you think I have to find them? At least one, said Yor. One will be enough. But what for? Bastian wanted to know. Now the miner's face was lit only by the faint glow of the hearth fire. Again his blind eyes looked through Bastian and far into the distance. Listen to me, Bastian Balthazar Bucks, he said. I'm no great talker. I prefer silence, but I will answer this one question. You are looking for the water of life. You want to be able to love. That's your only hope of getting back to your world. To love, that's easily said. But the water of life will ask you, love whom? Because you can't just love in general. Excuse me. You've forgotten everything but your name, but you can't answer. It won't let you drink, so you just have to find a forgotten dream, a picture that will guide you to the fountain. And to find that picture, you have to forget one thing you have left, yourself. And that takes hard, patient work. Remember what I've said, for I shall never say it again. After that, he lay down on his wooden cot and fell asleep. Bastian had to content himself with the hard, cold floor, but he didn't mind. When he woke up the next morning feeling stiff in all his joints, Yor was gone. To the mine, no doubt, Bastian decided. He took a dish of the hot soup which warmed him, but didn't taste very good. Too salty. It made him think of sweat and tears. Then he went out into the snow-covered plain and walked past the pictures. He examined one after another attentively, for now he knew how important it was, but he found none that meant anything in particular to him. Toward evening, Yor came up from the mine. Bastian saw him step out of the pit cage. In a frame on his back, he was carrying different-sized sheets of paper-thin isinglass. Bastian followed him in silence as he went far out into the plain and carefully bedded his new finds in the soft snow at the end of the row. One of the pictures represented a man whose chest was a birdcage with 2 pigeons in it, and another woman of stone riding on a large turtle. One very small picture showed a butterfly with letters on its wings, and many more, but none meant anything to Bastian. Back in the hut with the miner, he asked, "What will become of the pictures when the snow melts?" "It's always winter here," said Yor. They had no other conversation that evening. In the following days, Bastian kept searching among the pictures for one with some special meaning for him, but in vain. In the evening, he sat in the hut with the miner. Since the miner kept silent, Bastian got into the habit of saying nothing, and little by little he adopted Yor's careful way of moving for fear of making the pictures crumble. "Now I've seen all the pictures," Bastian said one night. "None of them is for me." "That's bad," said Yor. "What should I do?" Bastian asked. "Should I wait for you to bring up new ones?" Yor thought it over, then shook his head. "If I were you," he whispered, "I'd go down into the mine and dig for myself." "But I haven't got your eyes," said Bastian. "I can't see in the dark." "Weren't you given a light for your long journey?" Yor asked, looking through Bastian. "A sparkling stone or something that might help you now." "Yes," said Bastian sadly, "but I used Al-Tasahir for something else." "That's bad," Yor said again. "Then what do you advise?" Bastian asked. After a long silence, the miner replied, "That you just have to work in the dark." Bastian shuddered. He still had all the strength and fearlessness Orin had given him, but the thought of crawling on his belly in the black underground darkness sent the shivers down his spine. He said nothing more, and then both lay down to sleep. The next morning the miner shook him by the shoulders. Bastian sat up. "Eat your soup and come with me," said Yor. Bastian obeyed. He followed the miner to the shaft and got into the pit cage with him. Together they rode down into the mine. At first a faint beam of light followed them down the shaft, but it vanished as the cage went deeper. Then a jolt signaled that they had reached the bottom. Here below it was much warmer than on the wood tree plain. The miner walked very fast and tried to keep up for fear of losing him in the darkness. Bastian was soon covered with sweat. They twined their way over endless passages and galleries, which sometimes opened out into spacious vaults, as Bastian could tell by the echo of their footfalls. Several times Bastian bruised himself against jutting stones or wooden props, but Yor took no notice. On this first day, or for several that followed, the miner, by wordlessly guiding Bastian's hand, instructed him the art of separating the paper-thin leaves of incense glass from one another and picking them up. They were tools for the purpose. They felt like wooden or horn spatulas, but Bastian never saw them, for when the day's work was done they stayed down in the mine. Little by little he learned to find his way in the darkness. A new sense that he could not have accounted for taught him to disguise one gallery from another. One day Yor told him silently, with a mere touch of his hands, to work alone in a low gallery, which he could enter only by crawling. Bastian obeyed. It was very close and cramped, and above him lay a mountain of stone. Curled up like an unborn child in its mother's womb, he lay in the dark depths of Fantastica's foundations, patiently digging for a forgotten dream, a picture that might lead him to the water of life. Since he could see nothing in the eternal night of the mine, he could not choose or come to any decision. He could only hope that chance or a merciful fate would eventually lead him to a lucky find. Evening after evening he brought what he had managed to gather from the Minraud mine into the failing daylight, and after evening his work had been in vain. But Bastian did not complain nor rebel. He had lost all self-pity. Though his strength was inexhaustible, he often felt tired. How long this painful week went on it is hard to say, for such labor cannot be measured in days and months. Be that as it may, one evening he brought to the surface a picture. It moved him so deeply the moment he looked at it that he needed all his self-control to keep him from letting out a cry of surprise that would have crumbled the picture to dust. On the fragile sheet of incense glass, it was not very large, about the size of a usual book page, he saw a man wearing a white smock and holding a plaster cast in one hand. His posture and the troubled look on his face touched Bastian to the heart. But what stirred him the most was that the man was sitting up in a transparent but impenetrable block of ice. While Bastian looked at the picture that lay before him in the snow, a longing grew in him for this man whom he did not know, a surge of feeling that seemed to come from far away. Like a tidal wave, almost imperceptible at first, it gradually built up straight till it submerged everything in its path. Bastian struggled for air. His heart pounded. It was not big enough for so great a longing. That surge of feeling submerged everything that he still remembered of himself. And he forgot the last thing he still possessed, his own name. Later on, while he joined Yor in the hut, he was silent. The miner was silent too, but for a long while he faced Bastian, his eyes once again seeming to look through him and far into the distance, and for the first time since Bastian had come, a smile passed briefly over the miner's stone-grave features. That night, tired as he was, the boy who no longer had a name could not sleep. He kept seeing the pictures before his eyes. It was as though this man wanted to say something to him, but could not, because of the block of ice he was imprisoned in. The boy without a name wanted to help him, wanted to make the ice melt. As in a waking dream, he saw himself hugging the block of ice, trying in vain to melt it with the heat of his body. But then all at once he heard what the man was trying to say to him. He heard it was not with his ears, but deep in his heart. "Please save me. Don't leave me. I can't get out of this ice alone. Help me. Only you can help me." When they awoke next morning at daybreak, the boy without a name said to Yor, "I won't be going down into the mine with you anymore." "Are you going to leave me?" The boy nodded. "I'm going to look for the water of life." "Have you found the picture that will guide you?" "Yes." "Will you show it to me?" Again the boy nodded. They went into the snow where the picture lay. The boy looked at it, but Yor directed his blind eyes at the boy's face as though looking through it into the distance. For a long while he seemed to be listening for some sound. At length he nodded. "Take it with you," he whispered, "and don't lose it. If you lose it, or if it is destroyed, you have nothing left in Fantastica. You know what that means." The boy, who no longer had a name, stood with bowed head and was silent for a while. Then he said just as softly, "Thank you, Yor, for what you've taught me." They pressed each other's hands. "You've been a good miner," Yor whispered. "You've worked well." Then he turned away and went into the mine shaft. Without turning around, he got into the pit cage and descended into the depths. The boy without a name picked the picture out of the snow and plodded out into the snow-covered plain. He had been walking for many hours. Yor's hut had long since disappeared below the horizon. Excuse me. On all sides there was nothing to be seen but the endless snow-covered plain, but he felt that the picture, which he was holding carefully in both hands, was pulling him in a certain direction. Regardless of how far it might be, he was determined to follow this pull, for he was convinced that it would take him to the right place. Nothing must hold him back. He felt sure of finding the water of life. Suddenly, he heard a clamor in the air, as though innumerable creatures were screaming and twittering. Looking up into the sky, he saw a dark cloud like a great flock of birds, but when the flock came closer, he saw what it really was, and terror stopped him in his tracks. It was the butterfly clouds, the Schlamoofs. Merciful heavens, thought the boy without a name. If only they hadn't seen me, they'll shatter the picture with their screams. But they had seen him. Laughing and rollicking, they shot down and landed all around him in the snow. Hurrah! They croaked, opening wide their motley colored mouths. At last we found him, our great benefactor! They tumbled in the snow, threw snowballs at one another, turned somersaults, and stood on their heads. Be still, please be still, the boy without a name whispered in desperation. The whole chorus screamed with enthusiasm. What did he say? He said we were too still. Nobody ever told us that before. What do you want of me? Asked the boy. Why won't you leave me alone? All whirled around him, cackling. Great benefactor! Great benefactor! Do you remember how you saved us? When we were the Akaris? Then we were the unhappiest creatures in all Fantastica. But now we're fed up with ourselves. At first what you did to us was a lot of fun. But now we're bored to death. We flit and we flutter and we don't know where we are at. We can't even play any decent games because we haven't any rules. You've turned us into preposterous clowns. That's what you've done. You've cheated us. I meant well, said the horrified boy. Sure you meant well by yourself, the Schlamoofs shouted in chorus. Your kindness made you feel great, didn't it? But we paid the bill for your kindness, you great benefactor. What should I do? The boy asked. What do you want of me? We've been looking for you, screamed the Schlamoofs with grimacing clown faces. We wanted to catch you before you could make yourself scarce. Now we've caught you, and we won't leave you in peace until you become our chief. We want you to be our head Schlammoof, our master Schlammoof, our general Schlammoof. You name it. But why? The boy asked imploringly. The chorus of clowns screamed back. We want you to give us orders. We want you to order us around, to make us do something, to prevent us to do something. We want you to give us an aim in life. I can't do that. Why don't you elect one of your number? No, we want you. You made us what we are. No, the boy panted. I have to go. I have to go back. Not so fast, great benefactor, cried the butterfly clowns. You can't get away from us. You think you can sneak away from Fantastica, don't you? You'd like that, wouldn't you? But I'm at the end of my rope, the boy protested. What about us? The chorus replied. Go away, cried the boy. I can't bother with you anymore. You must turn us back, cried the show voices. Then we'd rather be Akaris. The Lake of Tears is dried up. Amar gathers on dry land now. No one spins fine silver filigree anymore. We want to be Akaris again. I can't, the boy replied. I no longer have any power in Fantastica. In that case, the whole swarm bellowed, swirling and swirling about, we'll kidnap you! Hundreds of little hands seized him and tried to lift him off the ground. The boy struggled with might and main, and the butterflies were tossed in all directions, but like angry wasps they kept coming back. Suddenly, in the midst of the hubbub, a low yet powerful sound was heard, sounding like the booming of a bronze bell. In a twinkling, the Schlamoofs took flight, and the clouds soon vanished in the sky. The boy who had no name knelt in the snow. Before him, crumbled into dust, lay the picture. Now all was lost. Now nothing could lead him to the water of life. When he looked up, he saw, blurred by his tears, two forms in the snow. One was large, the other small. He wiped his eyes and took another look. The two forms were Falcor, the White Luck Dragon, and Atreyu. And that is where we will end for tonight. Told you. Favorite book of all time. Thank you so much for watching, y'all. I will see you all. Let's see. Yeah, I'll see everybody on Facebook for House Movie Castle tomorrow. And then Thursday, we'll finish this. And then after that, we are going to start The Prydain Chronicles by Lloyd Alexander. If you're not familiar with that, The Black Cauldron. It's a famous Disney film. One of my favorite films. One of my favorite Disney films also as well. All right, y'all. I love you. Peace, light, love. Let your prana flow. I'll see you next time.